Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Better, a show about two longtime friends growing up, trying their best, and hopefully getting better. I'm Zach Johnson.
And I'm Sam Cherry.
Hey, Sam, how are you?
I am good.
Good.
I'm good. A very forceful good. We're doing good. It's quarantine, so we're just still here hanging out. We're watching. Have you ever seen the show Community?
Community, yes, of course.
Have you seen all of it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're in season 6 right now. I'm not sure how you feel about it, but in a reverse of the usual events, I don't like a show, and it sounds like from the way you said that you do like the show. How do you feel about Community?
Okay, so one of the best ways I heard Community described was it is two teams. There is an A+ ideas crew, and they hand it off to a C+ writing crew.
Okay, I don't.
Where some of the ideas are really creative in the way that they it's like one of those things where I think as it was coming out, it was like really fun and revolutionary, but right now it's kind of a bit overplayed, which is like deconstructing narratives and deconstructing the idea of what like a sitcom is.
Yeah.
So I think they do a lot of that, and that made people really excited because it was just the silly tropes, but they were being made fun of in this show where they were also partaking in those silly tropes. And some of those ideas were really good. Like they have one that's a bottle episode. They have some paintball episodes. And they have this one in a pillow fort. And like they have this one. Yes. They have one where they roll dice to like go into alternate universes, which is really creative. Yes. But throughout the show, like the idea is more memorable than the episodes themselves or the jokes themselves, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, what's funny is because it reminds me of a show that I would also describe that way. I don't think that. I think the problem with Community is a different one. But a show that I would describe that way would be How I Met Your Mother, a show I don't like at all, but I have seen all of, where it's exactly that feeling. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but that's exactly how I feel about How I Met Your Mother, where like, oh, I see what you were doing, and like that's a good idea, but the show itself is like very just, it's a sitcom where it's just like a slog of like, will they, won't they? Like, will they, won't they is the most boring garbage on television. To me, I know I'm trying to not be so me, but I do think that will they, won't they is just boring garbage. And so anyway, but Community reminds me a lot of How I Met Your Mother, where I'm like, oh, it's like a sitcom, but they're doing it more. Like they're like pushing the form of what a sitcom is to How I Met Your Mother's credit. I mean, they do like their running gags is something that is like, that's my favorite part of the show, because what is so frustrating about sitcoms, and frankly, obviously, you're listening to this, I'm just not the kind of person who should watch sitcoms. Because what I don't like is that everyone resets to one and there's no consequences. Well, Sam, that's what a sitcom is. So like, maybe watch a different show. But what I like about How I Met Your Mother is, you are rewarded for watching it. Now, I think the writing is boring, and a lot of the show, but the ideas are good. What I do see what you mean, because some of the writing of Community is boring, whereas the ideas are really top notch. We're in season 6 right now, and what is frustrating to me is it's like watching a big like tower of Lego, like a really cool, like a Lego Masters tower of Lego, fall to the ground, where it's like, oh, I really liked this a lot, and now I'm watching it slowly collapse under its own weight.
Yeah.
Because the whole 6 seasons in a movie thing, which is cool and a really good idea, just seeing that backfire to where like, oh no, you guys should have stopped at season 3. Maybe season 4, but like I think they get canceled at season 3, and then they get canceled again at season 4, and then they have 5 and 6.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's funny that you say that, because the show that I oftentimes like I would compare Community to would be Arrested Development.
Yeah,
and I know like
it's a fair comparison.
Yeah, and I'm actually borrowing a lot of this comparison from a YouTuber named Drew Gooden, who has a video on that. It's really good. You guys should check out Drew if you don't know about him. But
is this the video about how to or to not reboot a show?
Yes.
I've been meaning to watch it. I was actually talking to Sophie about it tonight. I was like, oh, I'm going to watch that video when I finish season 6. But no, tell me about it. I don't care. But.
It kind of like talks about how those shows both they kind of came out before they were ready to come out, or before like I guess like I don't want to say because before the world was ready for them, but you can definitely. But you can definitely see that Arrested Development was truly ahead of its time because it is a show that came out when sitcoms were like truly sitcoms, where everything resets to one and you don't need to follow a big storyline. And Arrested Development is all storyline, and they have jokes that take several episodes to build up to the punchline.
Seasons. And, I mean, Buster's hand
seasons, and they'll do some. They'll do a lot of like reverse punchlines where like the punchline happens before the setup, and it happens constantly over the course of the entire show, which is something that I think would have done a lot better in a medium that has like streaming, or like you can just watch all of it at once and you can kind of like hold on to that. But watching it week to week is very difficult, especially in a market of shows that have they're not written as smartly as Arrested Development, and they're not written for the intention of just like, I need to pay such close attention to this.
Well, and
I didn't know when Arrested Development came out, but like I think we talked about this last week of like the age of like premium television.
Sure,
and I think like Arrested Development like predates that, where
I don't know,
where like like you have it's one of the first shows that it came out in 2003.
You Google so much faster than me.
Yeah, so Arrested Development came out in 2003, so that is like way before the age where people are like, this is coming out, like, what other shows are coming out in 2003? What are sitcoms in 2003 like?
Well, and the whole business model is different because now with streaming services, the subscriptions are what keep the streaming services alive and not commercial buys and eyeballs watching it. Now, granted, obviously, if no one watches the show, Netflix is going to cancel it, but I think, from what I understand, there's a lot more cushion to say, like, hey, you can have a weird niche show that not everybody watches, but that is really good, that like a couple people, or not a couple people, but a group of people are really passionate about, and it doesn't have to be a smash. Again, this is what we talked about last week, the transition from a focus on movies to a focus on TV. Where movies have now become a thing where it's like, yo, everybody on the planet has to watch your movie or we're all going to be homeless. Like everyone has to watch every movie. Like it's just, they're so high budget. TV has become, I mean, it's always been lower budget, but it's so diversified and there's so much TV now that it's like, yeah, whatever. I mean, there's financial pressure. You need to get certain viewership, blah, blah, blah. But you can have smaller audiences and still survive, something that Arrested Development and Community didn't have the luxury of.
Yeah, because you can think like, in both Community and Arrested Development, they were not hugely popular. Like they had like diehard fans. Yeah. So they had like the diehard fans, and then much like the two of them, they got popular because of those fans, or because like Arrested Development got popular kind of because like the DVDs would come out and then people began to see it's like, oh, whoa, this is like way more, this is way smarter than I thought it was. Or they like would just, it would kind of like soak in over time, and then they got brought back and it just could not fill its own shoes because it'd been hyped up so much. And the same thing with Community. Like I have the very similar emotions of like watching Arrested Development season 4 was like watching this Lego tower that I loved just fall and get destroyed, and it was like, like it got crushed under its own weight.
Right. Yeah. Well, what's unfortunate and it makes me think of stuff which I haven't seen, but it makes me think of stuff like Firefly, where everyone is like,
I was literally just Googling Firefly. 2002 to 2003.
Okay, yeah, Firefly, or hey, we should no. You know how many people have done Script Doctor for Firefly? I was saying that first as a joke, and then I thought it's not even really a joke.
Exactly. Well, like because there's so many people, and like
I've never seen an episode of the show.
To be back.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, but it's like Firefly or Twin Peaks or something like that, where it's like, oh my gosh, we needed so much more of this, and you never get so much more of this But Community
Mhm.
is something that somehow, and I haven't looked it up because I don't want any spoilers for the show, even though it's not that kind of show, you know. But when I finish the show, then I'll kind of look more into like the show. But like Community had such a campaign of 6 seasons in a movie. That's what we're doing.
Mhm.
We're doing 6
Yeah.
seasons in a movie. They get canceled after 3 seasons and they're like, no, 6 seasons and a movie. That's what we're going to do. And you see them get the 6 seasons. And 4 was fine. But 5 and 6 are a slog. And they even acknowledge it because that's the kind of show it is. They acknowledge it in the show. Like, I'm watching an episode right now, and one of the opening jokes is, never mind, it's got a spoiler in it. Anyway, whatever. They acknowledge in the show, like, yeah, the show's not really interesting anymore. And it's like, okay, why are we doing this still? Like, it feels like almost it was offered kind of a merciful death at season 3 of like, you can just die here and everyone will know you as the show that you can, you can die a good show or live long enough to jump the shark. And they were like, no, 6 seasons in a movie, we're going to do it. And then they did all 6 seasons and it was like, oops, turns out this community college show isn't that great after they graduate community college. Like, no. And they have such a good punctual end. And I won't explain what happens, but there is such a good end at season 3 and season 4 where it's like, oh, these are two good stopping points. Like, we could just end here. And they're like, no, 6 seasons in a movie. And it makes me think of stuff like Firefly or Twin Peaks where it's like, oh, if only, God, what if there was more? And it's like, what? Maybe not. Maybe actually not. Because, and I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I think you get as, like, I think the way you described it was really well. Like, it's a merciful death. But I think it's like if you're a creator, then you must think it's like I have so many more ideas, and I want to make this thing go on for as long as I have like the wherewithal to keep it going.
Well, that's what's weird about 6 seasons in a movie because we're watching it and like there was clearly no plan for season 6, and real life gets in the way and yada yada yada, and maybe there was, but it's like it's almost like the Snyder Cut if it got released. It's like, yeah, we're going to do 6 seasons. And it's like, okay, so if you're saying 6, obviously there's a reason you don't want to do 5 and there's a reason you don't want to do 7. You've got a plan. And then you watch 4, 5, and 6 and you're like, hey, Dan, what the hell was the plan? Like, it's fine. Yeah. I've watched bad shows before, but why did you campaign so hard for 6 seasons if you're just going to do this? Like, you had no plan. There was nothing there. Yeah. It seems to me, obviously, like this can't be what you were planning.
Yeah, and you're on season 6 right now, right?
Yeah, I'm halfway through.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm not going to spoil it, but yes, sure. I think that thought that you have definitely persists throughout the rest of it.
I mean, even if it did, even if they wrapped it up I'm on episode 7, so even if they wrapped it up in the last 6 episodes, it's like, yeah, but you still had 4 or 5 in the first half of 6 that were going nowhere. So like, I know you didn't have a plan. Even if you came together in the last 6 episodes and like wrapped it all up, it's like, no, I saw where there was nothing for 4 and 5. Like, I don't know. It's just it's a weird. I'm trying to say something more general and not specific about the show because like I don't know if it's terribly interesting to just talk about this one show, but it is. It's strange. It's strange to see something that's like that wins. You know, that old fan thing, like the Snyder Cut, like Firefly. Yeah. Oh, man, we the fans know this is great. And Arrested Development is the same thing. Like, oh, it was cut too short.
Firefly won in the end.
Did they get a movie or something? Oh.
Yeah, Firefly has the 1 season, and then they have a movie that, like, kind of is the effective end of the show. And that movie is rad.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind. I take it back. Well, whatever. Like, let's just keep it to
but see, even like Firefly, they got to die a good death. They got to be the show because they still get known as like the show that was canceled too early.
Right.
But they got their 1 season and their movie.
Right.
And so it's like, I think it's better to, and like in the movie, it definitively ends everything.
Right.
Which I think was like the smart move, not in because you wouldn't want to end the movie with the expectancy of having more. And you're just like, all right, we like you're taking the money and run. Like it's like I'm going to allow this thing to like die off, and we will be the show that got cut off too early. We'll be immortalized.
Well, because like you look at Arrested Development, and it's like, their whole bit is these like escalating circular jokes, like the whole thing. I mean, even season 1, the whole like Hermano thing, like, but then you get to the Lucille and the hand and the da 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 da, and it becomes so circular, which is what is so funny about the show. And then they honestly do take it to the next logical conclusion in season 4. Season 4 is the logical next step for that show. It just turns out that was a bridge too far. And it's like, oh, maybe it didn't get cut too short. Maybe I just enjoyed the show and sometimes things end. Now I'm getting sad. But I think that is my opinion. All right, okay, I'm going to wrap this up and we'll move on. But that is my opinion, right? Is that like, yes, it's sad that it ended, but like something like Community, it's like, no, it probably would have been good to end at 3, and you didn't get 6 seasons in a movie, but maybe this story isn't 6 seasons long. Maybe this story is 3 seasons long, and that's how it is, and we go watch another thing that's another thing. But this show is just a 3-season show, and that's the story they wrote. The way that a good show like Breaking Bad is a 5-season show. Thank God there's no more seasons of Breaking Bad. It's just like, no.
Well, there is that movie.
I know. I haven't seen the movie. But still, the story of Breaking Bad, and there's Better Call Saul, but those are different things. Like, story of Breaking Bad is a story of Breaking Bad, and it's perfect the way that it is. And they didn't feel like they needed to, like, oh, but we could, they didn't 6 seasons in a movie. It's like, no, 5 seasons and a movie. That's it.
Yeah, they didn't do a thing where Walter White, it's like, and he goes to jail, but he makes a bomb out of the toilet water.
Exactly.
And then he explodes his way out to go become the most powerful drug dealer.
Right. And that's, of course, goes back to my problem with sitcoms is that, like, they just have to keep going and they have to keep, like, it's just such I think Breaking Bad was such an influence on not how I tell stories, because I don't really write, but what I mean is like the stories that I like the stories that I'm like, when I think of like good stories, like it honestly is so deeply influenced by Breaking Bad, because it was like, it wasn't planned out the whole way, but they had an end in mind and they had some beats in mind of like, we're going to go here, here, and here. And like The Wire, which is similar, like it's not as cut and dry, but it's like similar. Like, we want to talk about these topics. We want to explore these areas of the American city. We want to go over these ideas. And then we're out.
It's funny that, like, because you think of like shows that like have the end kind of in mind. Yeah. And it's like you can be rewarded for that, or you can like done goof the way that How I Met Your Mother did. Like, How I Met Your Mother, they had the thing where, because the kids in the opening sequence were getting older, they filmed the last episode years before the end of the last episode. And then they just like had, no matter what happened to those characters, no matter how those stories shook out, no matter how they grew, or like how the show responded to what the fans liked and what the fans didn't like, no matter what, any of that, because they filmed those kids, they had to have the last episode be Ted ends up with Robin, no matter what.
Oh, you're going to just spoil that show, I guess.
You know what? Here's the deal about How I Met Your Mother.
It's not a very good show.
It's not a very good show. And honestly, that is the worst part of the show. Ted's whole thing is the worst part of the show.
That makes sense, though, that you say that they filmed it first, because that is the big criticism of the last episode, is like, hey, what the fuck were you doing for the last season if this is how you, like, what were you, I mean, but even then that's still on the writers, because it's like, hey, you knew this is how it was going to end. I understand that there's like an organic way to tell stories, and so the ending could change. But you know the ending isn't changing. So
yeah. So it's like,
backwards.
why did you have, like, this is spoiler. Why did you have Barney and Robin together? Like, why do that? Why go through that whole rigmarole at all?
A whole season of making us believe that relationship. That's all season 9 is like, no, but for real, these guys are great.
Yeah, and then it was just like, psych.
Yeah,
like in the very last episode. Yeah.
Which again is like, there's been a lot of talk about Game of Thrones, and I won't spoil Game of Thrones, but I won't even talk about like what it but like, if you're watching it now, you know that people don't like the last season. I'm talking to the audience. You, Zach, also probably don't know that.
I don't. I have not seen one frame of that show.
I know, but you know that like people don't like the last season.
I know what happens.
Oh,
I,
well then
I have to-
also then okay
I have
that
to keep,
and
I have to keep culturally involved, you know.
yes, and people don't like it. So anyway, a lot of the discussion around it is that, of course, it's a series of books, and the author told the showrunners, like, here's how it ends. Here's the end point for the story. So they knew that, and then just sort of worked backwards from there, but in a way that was really rushed and really forced. And, like, it was kind of like you knew how much time you had. Why'd you do it like this? Although that's kind of a bigger story that takes more time. And frankly, they just ran out of time, and I don't know. That whole production thing is very confusing.
Those two directors had to leave to go do a Star Wars.
I know, but
and
it's
then get fired from doing a Star Wars.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah. I think they were like, it's funny because it's like they ate their own selves, where like I think they rushed through production to get done with the last Game of Thrones season so they could work on a Star Wars. And then the response to it was so bad that Disney was like, "You guys are toxic. We can't work with you right now."
I mean,
and then they didn't get to do a Star Wars.
That's a bummer. It's weird because I've listened to a podcast about the last season, and they talk of, and again, now I'm thinking about it, and it's like, if you haven't seen it, I would like someone to, like, if they had not seen the show and they were listening to our show, I would like them to go in blind and make up their own opinion. But it's kind of hard to watch the last season and not feel rushed and confused and unhappy. I think. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I watched it blind because, of course, I watched it when it came out. But anyway, so sorry if I'm coloring your experience of Game of Thrones. But it I've heard it described as like a career-making move. It's like, guys, yeah, you're going to do Star Wars, but you're Dan and Dave. You're the Game of Thrones guys. You need to stick this landing, right? It's like, oh, now I've forgotten his name. It kind of undercuts my point. But the guy who did Breaking Bad, right? Like that guy.
Vince Gilligan.
I don't give a fuck what he ever does again. He made Breaking Bad. It's like, you did it and you did it great, and I will always respect you as an.
Have you seen Better Call Saul?
I haven't.
Just letting you know, he is also crushing it with that. He's
it's very good. That's what I hear.
Like he did a gymnastics routine where he did like a quadruple backflip into like a 17 back handsprings, and then he got brought back for an encore, and he is crushing it again.
I know. I need to see the show. I just haven't. My wife hasn't seen any of Breaking Bad. She's like kind of gotten through the first like 3 or 4 episodes, and I always try to get her back into it. I don't think it's her show, and I just need to probably plow on without her. But anyway, no. So I haven't seen Better Call Saul or El Camino, but I'll get to it. I've got to slog through Community first. Also, this is a real classic episode.
Have to.
I know. I have to finish it. This is a real classic episode where we just talk about
This is real classic, yeah.
But I'm gonna keep on rolling. Vince Gilligan will always be the guy who made Breaking Bad, and it's like, yo, you're great. And even if Better Call Saul was bad, it was just like, yeah, but you made Breaking Bad, so like you're square. I don't, and I feel like Dan and Dave had that exact same moment with Game of Thrones, where like everyone loved the first 4 seasons, and most people loved 5. Things got a little shaky with 6, and 7 had a lot of red flags where it was like, hey, what's up? Like, what?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Like, there's just some specific plot points that, again, watching it when it came out, loving the show and just being like, what? Okay, so and then they're gonna do that. Well, all right, because again, it's me. I want it to be good. I want to like it, and I'm just like, all right, man, let's do it. And then you get to season 8, and it's just like, what's happening on the television? Mostly, I mean, I don't want to tell you every episode what I think of it, but I think. Even the whole season 8 isn't bad. It's just they don't stick the landing. And if it's because they're rushing to do Star Wars, it's like, guys, Star Wars is fine. I know that's a controversial opinion, but Star Wars is like the Avengers. It's fine. Like, it's good, but it's fine. It's not like prestige television.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like some fucking space wizards, and it's good, and I like it, and I'm not anti-Star Wars. Like, they're fun movies, and I've seen all of them, and I think they're good, but like, what are you doing? I guess money is part of it, I assume, right? You get a lot more I don't know, but it's HBO. I don't want to go on.
No, I'm just, it's interesting. They kind of like, yeah, they ruin their own legacy because like if you don't stick the landing with anything, it's like it doesn't matter. Like nothing matters,
right?
Like
because the show is the show.
Yeah, when the New England Patriots had that 18-0 season and then lost the Super Bowl, it was like that's the season where you guys lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like you didn't stick the landing. It doesn't matter what you did. Like the New York Giants won that year. They're the world champions. Yeah, you had like the best season ever, but
not the best season ever.
You didn't have the best season ever.
But you did lose the Super Bowl.
You did lose the Super Bowl, which is like the only game that you really needed to like buckle up and win.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, and I think that's I mean there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of, and again, part of it too is that certainly not a HBO production. Like it's not one person. It's not two people. It's a whole team of people and a whole team of writers and there's a lot that goes into it, but from everything I hear, it has this kind of George Lucas effect where the first 4 seasons are so good, and if you don't know, the first 4 seasons are the book seasons. They start running out. They kind of stagger the book content. It's boring and not worth getting into, but you fully run out of content after season 6. But they kind of stagger the book content through 5 and 6. But 5 is when you start getting original material. And but the first 4 seasons are so good that from what I hear, people stopped being able to say no. And the thing about the word's not television, the word's not film. Movie magic. The thing about movie magic is that
perfect.
Well, I mean all of them, I mean all of it. Movie magic is that it's a collaborative effort. It takes everyone, and it takes someone saying, no, George Lucas, maybe not Jar Jar Binks. But if you don't have someone saying George Lucas, not Jar Jar Binks, like George Lucas gets to do whatever he wants, and like it's a collaborative medium. Like that's how it goes. You have to have people who say no. And that is from what I hear kind of happened with Game of Thrones, is that as the first 4 seasons were just this phenomenon, and it was like, okay, you guys are the geniuses from heaven who made this good show. Do whatever you want. And you see as their control becomes more and more cemented, and as they become this bigger and they become Dan and Dave, you get diminishing seasons until you get to 7 and 8, where it's just like, yo, what are you doing? And it's, from what I hear, a lack of that collaborative effort, where like you don't have people to say no, you don't have people to workshop ideas. I'm sure there, of course, have that in the production, but their ideas become more and more weighted, and one person cannot make a television show. Like you need that collaboration. And from what I hear, that George Lucas effect kind of took on in the production, and they became central, and there stopped being that, and that's why it kind of fell apart. I don't know what that has to do with Community, but I'm bummed to watch this show get bad.
Well, I mean, I think that probably the same, maybe a similar thing happened with Dan, and I think that he's Dan Harmon, yes, and he's heralded as like, this like super genius, and I think that must get in the way of like any writing ability, because like he also works on Rick and Morty, and Rick and Morty is, for all intents and purposes, kind of the same thing as Community.
Totally, you can totally. I mean, it's obviously written by the same person. Yeah,
it's the same like. Putting a lens up to TV and being like, this is dumb, right? And it's like, yeah, you're fine. Like, and then so
and an inability to stick the landing.
Yeah. And so like it's very much similarly like the same thing. And I think that Justin Roiland, who also works on it, and Dan Harmon, like I think 2 years ago or whatever, Adult Swim bought 70 episodes of Rick and Morty. 70 more episodes after like after season 3. So season 3 ended, and then they have 70 episodes after that.
And you know how many they've made to date? This is I don't know, year 0 of quarantine. It's May of 2020. Oh my God. Anyway, it's May of 2020, some date in May of 2020. They've made 5 of those 70 episodes because they put out half a season after 2.5 years.
Yeah. So, like, yes, Goop indeed. And I fear that the exact same thing is going to happen, where it's like 70 episodes is a lot. Like we're entering into 100 episode territory, and like 100 episodes. That was season 5 of The Simpsons, and that is like the difference between season 1 and 5 is night and day. And they, were a long running show that it could just like do, like. But it was so grounded. Like Rick and Morty is not grounded in anything. Like, and so because of that, like how many more times can we, see them make fun of a movie we like before we're like, all right, this is getting a little old. Like,
right. Or like how many times can it be like, hey Rick, you're kind of a dick. I'm not your friend anymore. And it's like, okay, but there need to be consequences. Yeah, I mean, you're getting into the sitcom problem of like, okay, but there need to be consequences, and it's like, okay, but to have compelling consequences, unless this is the slowest burn, we kind of need. He already went to space jail, so like, we need to start killing characters if we're gonna have 70 episodes of consequences.
And I think like that him going to space jail was like such a good moment for the show because it had already been 3 seasons, and it was like, he went to space jail, and then it seemed like that is essentially as high as the stakes could get. And then the next episode, he just like destroyed the galactic empire or whatever with no consequences. And then after that, they were like, wibbity wabbity, let's buy a dragon. And it was just like, okay, like, I guess we're going back to normal stuff.
And they're kind of pacing it out, which I prefer, because if we're going to have, I mean, like I just finished, not the epilogue, but I finished the main series of Steven Universe. And like, there's a ton of filler episodes in that. But they do a good job of spacing out. There's a lot more plot in Steven Universe than there is in Rick and Morty, but they space out the real plot episodes. There are filler episodes where they like play baseball and shit, like, which are great. But like, there are filler episodes, and then there are plot episodes, and I prefer to space it out, especially if you've got 70 episodes, because what you don't want to do is have something where like we do a whole bunch of plot and then it's just like, I don't know, and like backfill with filler, which is what Community is doing. We're like, no, the show kind of ended in season 3 or 4, and now we're just backfilling of like, brr. I don't want to keep talking about Community. I feel like we've explained that, but yeah, but Rick and Morty is very similar, where it's worrisome, and they're playing it tongue in cheek. Like the next 5 episodes of season 4 are coming out, and like the promo, they said like, the rest of the season you deserve, or something. Like they understand like a 5 episodes is not an acceptable season, and we are going to give you the rest of it. And they've said publicly this will be the the break between 3 and 4 is going to be the longest break. But everything you see about Dan Harmon, and I don't know the guy, he seems like a very talented writer who has a hard time sticking the landing. Because, and they've got like the evil Morty stuff, and like it's in there, and like, I mean, they're what is it called? The Atlantis mix-up.
Oh yeah, the Rick Atlantis mix-up. Yeah.
Is a phenomenal episode of television, animated or otherwise. It's just good. Now it's riffing off a bunch of other shit because it's Dan Harmon, but like, it's riffing off a bunch of good shit. Like it's a good episode of television. Again, animated or not, it's just like good TV. And they're pacing that out, which I appreciate. I don't want a whole season of Evil Morty and then Evil Morty dies and then we have to go back to bullshit. Like that can be your whole show. That can be all 70 episodes is a slow burn of Evil Morty, and that's okay. But I worry about the show because it's like, I don't know. I hope it's good, but
we all hope that things are good, and it's interesting that I feel that we're kind of in like I think it was 2019 was like the year of like botched landings, and this is 2020 now. Sure. I have to go back to those problems, but the exact same thing, in my opinion, happened to Star Wars: The Rise of the Skywalker, which was just like fumble,
Sure.
And the same thing happened to Game of Thrones, where it was like fumble, fumble, fumble.
Yeah.
Because like, I think that, J.J. Abrams has the exact same problem. He just can't stick landings very well. Good ideas guy, not super great at coming to a conclusion. And maybe there's only a few people that are actually good at conclusions.
Yeah, but he's better at, I mean, not everybody can be Vince Gilligan, or the guy who made The Wire, whoever that is. My friend gave me a book about The Wire I haven't read yet, but it's a whole book about the making of The Wire. So you're going to hear a lot more about The Wire soon, because as soon as Dune is done, I'm going to be reading a lot about The Wire. So buckle up. But J.J. Abrams is one where he, like, I agree, because we've seen Lost, and, like, I think he, and his other stuff, like, he does have a hard time with, it seems, with sticking the landing. But he's also, he's much better at, like, papering over it with just pure talent. Like, he is obviously a talented filmmaker. He obviously, like, makes good films. Like, you look at them and they're good, right? Like, he is good at making films. And also that just, like, the thing about being a director on a big production is, like, managing lots of creative people. And it seems like letting creative people, I mean, you don't have that. I mean, letting creative people be creative. I like a lot of his work, but I agree. Like, there is stuff where it's like, it doesn't seem planned. And he's even said his whole mystery box thing is that he doesn't plan it. He doesn't know where it's going to go. And that's fine up to a point. I mean, a lot of organic storytelling is that way, where you're like, no, we just kind of write episode to episode and we have our major beats, but, like, we're trying to let the characters sort themselves out and let episode 6 be determined by what happens in episode 5. And I don't think it's fully, like, freeform jazz. People have their story beats, but but yeah, he does always seem to have, like, it's too big. And then it's like, okay, no, but the movie does need to end, though. And it's like, oh, I actually don't know what the black smoke on the island is.
It's not like, purgatory. It's not purgatory. It's not purgatory. It might be.
It might. I don't know. There's a statue with 4 feet or with 4 toes.
You figured out, dum dum.
I don't know, and no one knows, and it's a fictional show, so there's actually not an answer. And so stuff like that is frustrating, but I think he really does make up for a lot of it in pure talent, because he's like, it's different where, like, Dan Harmon is an incredibly talented writer, but it's not something like Community is a very well-made show, but it's not something where it's just like, holy shit, this show is unbelievable. Because if it was, it wouldn't have gotten canceled. You know what I mean? Like, it's good and it's really well written, but it's not something that transcends to where, like, they don't really know where they're going yet, but it's just so good. We gotta keep watching. It's not that way. Whereas I think J.J. Abrams makes up for the fact that he's not great at landings by being really, really great at everything else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Because, he's very technical and he can handle big projects. Whereas Community is kind of like, it really just sings in its minimalism rather than its extravagance.
Sure.
Man, this is a classic episode.
It's been a Sam heavy episode. There's been a lot of me monologuing about television.
I'm having flashbacks.
I try not to, but I'm on one about TV today.
You were like, I am going to, guys, buckle up. I am watching Community and I have a lot of thoughts.
That's true. I do have a lot of thoughts. Well, also nothing else has happened. The thing is, when I start a show, I have to just watch it all the way through. And I did that with Steven Universe. But it's so good. I don't have that much to say about it. It's just a good television show.
It's just a good show. Gravity Falls, just a good show. Avatar: The Last Airbender, just a good show.
Good show. I finished Adventure Time, and I've started this working theory of, well, just cartoon shows, because who cares about anything else? But of plot or like a spectrum of how seriously does a show take itself, and plotting from, okay, so we've got Adventure Time on one side of the spectrum, which is almost not at all, and then Over the Garden Wall on the other side of the spectrum, which is every single part of this is important to the show. Now, granted, the difference being 10 episodes versus 10 seasons, you got a lot more you got to kind of deal with. But, those are good shows. I mean, I've got thoughts about Adventure Time, but again, it's just like, well, here are the things that I felt I didn't like, whereas Gravity Falls, it's like, nope, good. I wish I had a time machine and I could have gone back and made it because it's a perfect show that I love. So yeah, it's kind of hard. It's hard not to be negative when you're talking about media because if something's really good, you can talk about the ways that it's good, but it's more, there's less to say, I feel like, and I don't know why that is.
I mean, you can it's something to behold rather than something to talk about, you know, like a lot of the things that are good in Gravity Falls are just like nuances or just like the satisfying way with which the characters grow and speak to each other. And that's not something you can necessarily point to. And like, I think it's like, that's good writing if you can't really notice. Like no one talks about Breaking Bad other than it's like it's just really great. And it's like how do you what about it's great? It's like it just is. Like every relationship is important. Every plot point leads to something, and it all happens so gradually. You have no idea that you are being like sucked into this world,
right?
And like you don't know. And I think the first time you watch Breaking Bad, it's interesting because you find the good guys to be the villains. And then it's not until the very end that you're like, oh, wait a minute. Like Walter is the bad guy. And it's like, yeah, he's the bad guy. Yeah. He's been dealing meth the whole time. And it's like, oh man, I never really considered him to be a bad guy. Cause like, you know, the camera was on him and we were watching his story beats. And it's like, nah, dude, like you were just like, it was the unreliable narrator. Like you got by the unreliable narrator.
It's a masterclass in like protagonist versus hero. It's like Walter is not the hero. He is very explicitly the villain of the show. Yeah, but he's the protagonist, and so you follow him and you empathize with him because that's how TV go. But it's like, yeah, it's not. I mean, the same is true with not all. What am I saying? A lot of prestige TV, right? Like the first 2 seasons of House of Cards or Mad Men or blah blah blah, like all these like anti-heroes where it's so interesting to watch. But I think what it is like good. It's like higher or lower, right? Like if you're really talented and you understand the medium, you're like higher up. Oh gosh, see, that's a bad way to put it. I'm going to keep pushing through and hope you all understand. I don't mean in like quality of human beings. But if you're like higher up, right? And so you can see the things that are higher up and you're like, oh, I understand what's good about this. But it's really easy to look down and be like, oh, that's bad because the things that are bad about it. So you can see things that are lower than, this sucks so bad. Do you understand what this sucks?
I do not.
Really?
No.
Imagine imagine it's a video game. And here we go. Now I've got it. Imagine it's a video game. And you're level 7. All right? Do you follow?
Yes, I'm here thus far.
Okay. So then you're level 7. And at level 7, you can sort of scan the enemies, all the goblins and ghouls, and see their weaknesses and their strengths and go, oh, well, he's resistant to fire, but he's really weak against melee attacks, right? But then the higher level enemies, the dragons and other goblins, you can't because you're not a high enough level. So you're like, I don't know, they're strong and I can't kill them, but I don't know why. And then as you go up in level, you can see the weaknesses of higher level monsters and kill them. I don't know. The metaphor kind of falls apart there. But what I'm saying is that maybe it's harder to understand good media and its strengths because it is smarter, right? Like, I don't know how. No, but really, I couldn't make a show. I mean, I couldn't make any show, but I couldn't make a show like The Wire or Breaking Bad, or we got to find other shows. You know, or like the first 2 seasons of House of Cards. I see those and go, damn, those are good. Why are they good? If I knew why they were good, I'd be writing television. But in the remaining seasons of House of Cards, I say, oh, those are bad. And I can see why they're bad because they're shitty and dumb. Or the last couple episodes of Game of Thrones. It's like, oh, I can see why those are shitty because I don't want to be reductive to people who write television, but like it takes less skill to write something that is bad.
Yeah.
And so me being at a lower skill level of critical understanding, I can recognize the bad low skill writing. 'Cause I
Mhm.
see it and go, oh, I understand that because that's more on my level. Whereas things that are way above my level, I'm like, nope, don't know how that works at all. That's what I'm trying to say. Sam heavy episode.
Okay, well, I'm gonna steal it towards
Please,
the end.
please.
So we were talking about, and this is the Zach's recommendation corner.
Cool.
We were talking about like shows with there's a difference between the protagonist as well as the villain. One show I want to recommend that I am just kind of just floored by just the brilliance of it. It's just good. And it is the DC Universe original show Harley Quinn. It is an animated show.
What?
Okay, so
and it's good?
it is unbelievable.
Go figure.
So Harley Quinn is the Joker's his like sidekick.
Yeah.
And it kind of so I think I like this show because it takes a lot of the beats of like animation, even the way that characters are visualized from like the Justice League shows that came out whenever I was a kid. But it takes them and it adds a lot. There's like obviously there's a lot of foul language, a ton of like very graphic violence in the way that would happen if there was actual superheroes. And but the thing that's kind of holding the show together is it is Harley Quinn dealing with the fallout, because the show begins with her breaking up with the Joker, and the show deals with her having to come to terms with being someone who was identified by being in an abusive relationship, and how she comes to terms with that her entire identity is wrapped up in another person, a person that was very cruel to her. And it like takes these it's very silly and like all over the place, but like it takes these very like realistic moments of just her trying to find out who she is in the wake of like getting out of an abusive relationship. And it really like kind of turns that whole romanticizing the Joker and Harley Quinn thing on its head. And it does not shy away from that. It is very much like it knows the people that have it, like openly mocks people that romanticize that relationship.
Weird.
And so it like the show like very clearly is against people that like look up to their relationship as something to behold.
So
And it's
all of the Hot Topic, like,
exactly,
fandom.
yes, and it very much like it paints it in this like very cruel and like very realistic negative light. And it's just like the way it handles it, I think, is just like phenomenal. It is, and it's like because it is this DC show that has cartoons with like a lot of like goofy subplots and like realistic violence. Those moments really take you off guard. Because you're just like, I'm watching a fun show. Oh no, why is she crying? What is going on?
Oh, wild. So I'm on the wiki, and the two guys that made it are Paul Dini, who is the guy who created Harley Quinn, because as you know, of course, Harley Quinn did not exist until the Batman television show. She was made up for the show, and then they brought her into the comics. And so the concept was by Paul Dini, and the other guy, Bruce Timm. They both have worked like exclusively on comic book shows. I think he was an animator on the Batman show, so he might be like one of the people who like. So these are the two dudes that invented Harley Quinn.
Yes.
I mean, along with the team and
yeah.
But you know, these are the two dudes that invented Harley Quinn, and they're making the Harley Quinn show. Wow.
Yeah.
Wild.
And it's just really interesting because it really does. And like, there's a lot of like, I would say what is kind of the Deadpool version of like kind of humor now where like they're kind of aware what's going on and like they're aware of the silliness of the situations. And there's some episodes where like there's one episode that explicitly acknowledges it is a TV show.
Cool.
And they do it to make fun of people that don't like the TV show because they are like the people that would not like it. The people that are just like, this is just like liberal whistleblowing and they just want us to think that women are powerful characters, da 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 da. And it's like it's like those two guys and their complaints of the show is the joke. And one of them is wearing a shirt that says "Release the Snyder Cut," and it's it's like
so they've seen Rick and Morty.
It's very pointedly getting at like it is like against. It's a show that is designed to dismantle its own toxic fan base. And it does it really, really well. Like not just being like over the top silly, but just like taking very realistic moments to acknowledge that like finding your identity in someone and then that ending because you realize it was an abusive relationship is very difficult and it takes a long time.
Wild.
Yeah, it is.
Sounds good.
It is disarming. Like,
and it's on the DC universe. I'm not getting the DC universe. I'm not.
Yeah, I know. It's like
I understand why you would get DC universe.
I get it because I heard the same. And like the thing about DC universe is
the streaming service. If that isn't clear,
it's a streaming service, and it's like yet another streaming service, and they have their own you can read all the comics from the back catalog and whatever, but they are 4 for 4 in great TV shows, really? And it's confusing. It's like because DC is kind of known as like it's the Zack Snyder version of DC, where it just like it's like what if we introduced Superman and then subverted him in the same movie, and it's like oh well then you just introduced a dude that flies, like you didn't introduce Superman. Like you can't be like this is Superman, he's like he is the perfect guy but he's also in a bad mood. It's just like okay well we just met him so
so I don't know the difference. It's like what's the robot from the Star Wars movie where it's like General Grievous, where it's like he's the greatest Jedi killer, but he's got a cold, and it's like, well, I've never seen him otherwise, so I don't know anything about this guy. It's like, well, he's got a sickness, though he's a robot. So anyway, he is sick the whole time.
But if you read the supplemental comics, he's the greatest fighter of all time. Okay. It doesn't really seem like it, but
I'm watching this movie though,
and I'm not going to read those things. I didn't know I was supposed to do. I didn't know I was supposed to do homework before I showed up to this movie.
What? Wait, I'm sorry. Oh, Superman. Yeah. Can I say one thing? I know that after Endgame, obviously we're in a lull, and maybe this is the end of superhero movies, and like, here's hoping. But you know, there's definitely going to be a like, okay, we need to do something different because Endgame was the end of it. So like now we're in a different era of the superhero movies. I would love if we could, as a just blanket agreement, nobody gives a shit about the civilians. Stop talking to me. They're superheroes who can fly. It would be like having a scene in Batman where he goes to the bank and sets up separate accounts. I don't give a shit. It's like Six Underground, and I said this last week. I actually don't give a shit that he's dead and also getting his money. That's not important to me. Why would you think I would care? And the fact that every superhero movie now feels like because they read Twitter and don't understand like normal people, and they're just like, well, I don't know, people on Twitter are being snarky and saying a lot of people would have died, so I guess we should every movie explain and make unbelievable scenarios where actually no civilians. Hey, I don't give a shit, it's a movie. I know it's a movie, I don't care. I don't need this like we have to fight on this abandoned island. I don't care. You blow up as many buildings as you want. I seriously don't give a shit. They're not real people. I understand that. So blanket banned. Next era of comic books, movies, that whole thing is banned.
It is decreed.
It is decreed. No more caring about the civilians. I don't care. You never cared. No one cared. Stop doing it.
But back to my recommendation corner.
Please.
So DC Universe is great, and I would recommend it. It is yet another streaming service, but if you are ever into the DC comics, it's phenomenal. They have, and like it's so funny that like these shows have no business being good.
Sure.
Harley Quinn has no business being good. Doom Patrol, which has a budget of what I'm assuming is $14, has no business having writing as strong as it does. And this show called Young Justice is very, very good, animated in the same style. It is a phenomenal show that deals with like the superheroes as teenagers, like grappling with like identity crises and like what it means to be a metahuman in a time where you're trying to like blend in with everyone else. Super good.
That's like
And
a
they
reboot,
have-
right?
It's not not a reboot. They had 2 seasons. It was canceled, then it was brought back.
6 seasons in a movie.
6 seasons in a movie. And finally, they have this show called Swamp Thing. And if you're unaware of what Swamp Thing is this guy that experiments on himself, and he becomes like this big mossy creature that is like the size of a bison. And he speaks for the trees like the Lorax does.
Oh.
And anytime someone does something bad to nature, he like lives in this swamp and he kills them. But the way that it's shown in this TV show is like a monster movie where Swamp Thing is very scary. And the show is very scary. Like the way that they present him, where you introduce this guy, he gets turned into Swamp Thing, and then the rest of it is just like Alien. It is this guy like systematically like hunting down everyone, and it's it's like a really freaky show. And they do it really, really well because that's how that stupid little thing was in the comics. So it has no right to be as good as it is. It was canceled after 4 episodes, but they finished the rest of the series. Has no right being as good as it is, but it certainly is. That is my surprising good content corner that I hold to myself. Just I have it in a little like I'm swaddling it because no one else really knows about it, because no one's going to pay the extra money for yet another streaming service that has cartoons on it. But
That's true.
if you guys have extra money laying around, it is all those shows. The way like they're surprisingly good, but the way I said it earlier was the way it is. It has no business being as good as it is. Like it should not be good, but it is, and that's just the what's happening over there in DC Universe.
That's so wild. Yeah, I mean, I like Justice League stuff. Maybe I'll swing over to Young Justice. There's some good recommendations. I don't know. It's hard because I got a lot of services. You know, in the quarantine, we really have.
Exactly.
We've traded all our beans for subscription services, and
That's true.
So that's tough. Oh, I was gonna do the all right thing, but we have an outro.
Yes, we do.
I will cut. Well, I'll probably keep it for the fun of the show because it's a new outro. But yeah, let's do the outro.
Sure thing. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you all so much for listening to Get Better. You can find us at Get Better Podcast on Instagram. That is at get_better_podcast. And you can also reach us at meetthefockers2 fockedup@gmail.com, where you guys can, respond to things that we ask, especially with this last week's episode, where if you have any picture of you at a restaurant and you want to get 4 Goodyear Get Better bucks or 4 Goodyear Get Better TMCR stars, you would send that over to our email, which is once again, meetthefockers2 fockedup@gmail.com. We, once again, do not have a Patreon, but if we did, it would be hyperlinked to any other charity helping out in this COVID-19 outbreak. And that's all I have. And see you guys next week.
All right.
All right.
See you. Bye forever.
See you. Bye forever.